Hello, this is Tiara,
Hello, this is Allie.
and this is the Goddess Vibration. Welcome back to another episode. So, this episode is going to be an interesting one because a couple months ago, this is actually back in March 2023, I was watching a TikTok and I commented on this TikTok. And that one comment that I put on that TikTok has gotten so many likes and replies. And to this day, November 2023, it is still getting likes and replies. And so this podcast recording is going to give a little bit more clarity into that because clearly it's a topic that you guys are interested in and you guys want to know more about and we want to deliver that. It's taken me a while to get to this point because of the nature of the topic. So I don't know if some of you guys are involved with witch talk on TikTok. So, for reference, there are different categories of content on TikTok. So, you've got your witch talk, you've got your spiritual talk, you've got your horror talk. So, just different categories of content that you can search based on, that specific hashtag. So, there's one that is witch talk, and there's this gentleman that I follow. I'm not going to say who he is, but there's a gentleman that I follow who posts TikToks about his services. He claims to be a witch, and his services are to put on spells and hexes for people who pay him to do that. Now, I have been a witch in past lives, and I am of the belief that there is karma associated with doing that kind of stuff. And I'm also of the belief that I am still dealing with that karma. But to each their own, we've given our warning in other episodes about doing that kind of stuff. But I did initially try to put some clarity in the comments for one of his TikToks. And I think I said there's a lot of karma with doing this. You shouldn't be doing this. And people ripped me apart. So I was like, you know what, whatever. So when this TikTok came across my FYP, it was about this particular guy doing his services, but not doing and providing his services if his client works with a very specific archangel. And I thought that was interesting because at the time, I knew an archangel. I know several archangels, but I knew one who had made someone reincarnate. So I put that on there and I was just like, speaking of archangels, and then I just put on there, I had witnessed this. I have seen an archangel make someone incarnate. And when I tell you that the comments blew up, like that comment, oh my God, everyone was like, say more. I need to know more about this. Are you joking? What? What? Until this day, people are still asking me to talk about it. So that's what I'm doing with this episode is to provide a little bit more clarity about that scenario and that situation. Um, because it's a very interesting one. And clearly, you guys care so much.
Well, why wouldn't they care? I mean, it's fascinating. I think reincarnation as a whole topic is really interesting only because there's so much involved with a reincarnation and it the soul has to go through like when a soul passes, like a soul kind of goes through this judgment period where it's like you meet with your team again and you kind of go over like your last incarnation and you kind of decide like if there's more lessons you need to learn or you kind of give your input on how you think it went and how they think it went. And then, I guess like from that meeting you can decide whether or not like reincarnation is on the table, if you're going to reincarnate right away, if it's going to be something later. And so I just think that it is a really fascinating topic.
Well, a lot of that stuff comes from the teachings of Dolores Cannon, right? Like, wasn't she the first one who has really talked in depth about what happens and why people reincarnate?
I don't know if she's the first one. I know that she's a person that is very well known, who many people in the spiritual community follow. And she does. She talks a lot about she talks a lot about fascinating things in terms of like soul contract and
Mm.
lessons learned and Earth being a school, and you really can't leave Earth unless you have the ability to like astral travel at night in the dream world, or really if your soul dies. And so, she brings a lot of, perspective to the soul journey, and reincarnation is definitely part of that process.
Okay, so I wonder if that's what it is that just like have has people's minds blown about this like one sentence. It was literally one sentence that I put on there, and everyone was like, "Oh shit." Um, but it was about reincarnation, and I think people don't like the idea of being made to reincarnate. Um, and I think that's interesting because I feel like that's necessary for your growth and evolution. So it's just strange to me that there would be such a negative sentiment if that's the case in regard to reincarnation, because like that's how you ascend and expand and evolve and raise your frequency. Like, why would you be against that?
I think it depends on where you reincarnate to, though, because you can reincarnate in other planets and other galaxies. I wouldn't be. I mean, I've told Tiara this a few times. Like, I wouldn't be in any rush to come back to Earth, especially 3D Earth. No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, well, I guess I kind of get that. But like, if it's necessary for your growth and evolution, and that's what you want, that's probably what your soul is going to choose.
Well, actually, the really interesting thing about Earth, and I know that we've channeled this, and I'm pretty sure Dolores Cannis has probably talked about it, is that you have to have permission to come to Earth. Like,
That's
no one
true.
can just choose to reincarnate here on Earth. Like, you have to get permission. So, Earth is a very special system, and that's probably because it's set up like a school. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a privilege and a curse to come to Earth, depending on your
Well,
perspective.
well, sure. So, like, to your higher self and your soul, it's a privilege, and then to your ego, you're just like, why am I here? Um, so I get that.
So,
So, okay, so I'm just gonna share a little bit of what I witnessed, and like, again, this is just my perspective of everything. I'm sure there are other entities and beings who have their own perspectives, but this is just mine. So, this particular being that was in need of reincarnation was resisting that. And I got the sense that this being was of heavy wounding and of a relatively lower vibration and still needed to learn lessons, which makes total sense to me, in my opinion. Like, absolutely. Like, if you want to heal those woundings, like, you're going to have to reincarnate. Like, that's just the way it is. For whatever reason, the soul was resisting. I think that this entity's prior life had been very difficult. I should say lives has been very difficult. And that can happen, especially if you struggle to capture the lesson or you struggle to escape a negative cycle that your soul just keeps reincarnating into.
or if you
It
collect more karma, just throwing that
Sure.
out there.
Right. Or if you collect, well, I mean, yeah, if you collect more karma, and perhaps know that you did in a prior life, and so now you're just like, oh shit. I could see that giving resistance to needing to reincarnate, but it was just interesting to me because I'm like, well, if you know you need to get beyond this, why wouldn't you just embrace that and be like, hey, all right, this is what I need to do? For some reason, that's not what this being did. So I saw a specific archangel corner this being and try to convince this being to that the significance of needing to reincarnate. Um, I hate to use the word fight, but I guess it kind of turned into that because
It
I
was an
witnessed.
argument. It was definitely an
Okay,
argument.
okay, argument, fine. We'll use we'll use the word argument for the sake of this discussion. But they kind of went back and forth, and it was just like this. this battle. And I try to stay out of other people's shit. Like, I try to stay on the sidelines if I can. Sometimes I get pulled into stuff and I can't help it. I guess in some sense I kind of was in this case just because I was witnessing it, and this particular
Oh, sister, you're
archangel
not
and
the only one who
entity.
gets pulled into things.
Oh yeah, I know.
I got pulled into your whole situation.
Okay, well that's a different podcast episode. Um so yeah, so I witnessed this go back and forth for a little bit, and I witnessed this entity that needed to get reincarnated like run and just like run to different auras of people, and like I don't know if he was going to different realms and like just disappearing, and then no one could find him. And I was just like, this dude is playing like hide and seek, and I don't get how he's doing it. So when it the opportunity came to corner this being, that's what the archangel did. They had their whole battle, and I don't know if he like needed to do some heavy convincing to get the reincarnation to happen, or if it was just like, boom, you're doing this, I'm controlling it, it's happening. I don't know how that went down, but apparently at some point this angelic being was able to get the entity to reincarnate. So, we
It
use the
felt
term
like a
forced.
yeah, it felt like a very forced reincarnation.
Well, okay, and that's the thing is like, how do you force a reincarnation, especially with Earth, because you have to have permission to incarnate on Earth. So if the soul doesn't want to do that, that's why I'm like, well, where, how, like, you know what I mean? It's just weird to me. So I feel like at some point the being had to have like just been like, okay, fine.
Well,
You
I
know what I
don't think
mean?
every soul gets to choose to reincarnate on Earth. I think that goes through a higher, like, like a higher council, a higher panel, I guess you could say, that probably makes those decisions.
So like an Earth, like a panel over Earth, or like a Earth school panel or something like
I
that.
am not surprised if that exists. I'm sure it does.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it probably does. Something to that akin probably does. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but there are like panels and societies and councils in the universe for like literally anything and everything, and it's crazy. It's almost like on Earth where we have, our councils and our groups and clubs and stuff and organizations. Well, they do that too, and for just about any topic you could possibly think of that's like of significance.
The mirroring is actually quite significant. You know, it's like as sometimes in our channeling sessions we'll channel and I'm just like, wow, that is kind of like a similar system here on Earth. And so it's really interesting, like the duality between the two.
No, it really is. And it's fascinating to see that because I would have never thought that, all these angelic beings have, and extraterrestrials and, whomever else have these councils and societies. And, I'm just like, wow, that's like crazy. Um, so that's what I witnessed. And Allie loosely had some, she witnessed it as well and, had some role in that. Um, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about reincarnation and the cycle of reincarnation because I feel like there's a lot of confusion out there because it seems to just be, I guess, depending on who you are and your perspective, like this blatantly negative thing to ever have to reincarnate here on Earth. And I think that's kind of sad because every opportunity to reincarnate is an opportunity to capture a lesson and become better. In my opinion, like that's how I look at it. I mean, yeah, Earth, in 3D, it can suck a lot, especially if you let ego rule your life. But you're given an opportunity to escape that every single time. You just have to choose it. So that's why I just like this blatantly negative perspective in regards to reincarnation. I don't know. I don't fully grasp it. I guess I don't
I
know.
can't say that
Maybe it's just me.
I, well, I can't say that I fully grasp it myself, but I will say that there I've seen the debate and I see both sides. And the big debate is, you know, once you reincarnate, then pretty much after you reincarnate, like once your conscious mind kicks in, it's like you have amnesia. That's how they explain it. And it's really hard to learn and capture the lesson when you can't remember. So it's like it's a blessing and a curse because a clean slate is amazing, right? A clean slate means like you're given more chances, given more opportunities. But at the same time, a clean slate, like having that amnesia, is kind of like, well, why am I going through this? And why does this feel familiar? And why do I keep going through this, but the result never changes? Now I understand that that's the result not changing is where you need to capture the lesson. But I also feel because you have the amnesia, you're given an unfair advantage unless you can unlock some of those memories and some of those past lives. And I understand that that comes like with the ascension process. But like I said, I see both sides of the coin where it is kind of unfair, but also like it's also a clean slate. And sometimes like that is a huge blessing, especially when you have a shit ton of karma and you have so many lessons to learn. So it's nice not to remember some of that, but like I said, both sides of the coin. So it's a hard, it would be a really interesting debate, really.
It really would be. And I do kind of agree about the whole losing your memory thing because I've seen that like people talk about that about how you may have been on earth like thousands of lifetimes and then you reincarnate and don't remember any of the lessons from your prior lifetimes. And it's just like, well, how do you take advantage of all that learning? You know what I mean? Because now you're at risk of taking on more karma. So I get that, and I do think that like to some degree it's kind of messed up that that happens. But at the same time, apparently it's supposed to be necessary because if you know all the lessons, then it's like cheating. Um, so I get that, like that argument, like I get that. I do think it's like kind of messed up, but what are you gonna do about it?
I don't know if there is anything you can do about it. It's just like I said, I see both sides and so I can argue both sides, but I definitely see the unfair advantage of it. And I could see why that would be off-putting to people and be like, why do I want to continue to reincarnate and keep going through this same stuff when I can't even remember it? It's like throw me a bone
Hmm.
here and lead me in a direction to set me up for success versus me just being kind of trapped in this karma cycle.
So I have read online a little bit about when people have near death experiences and they see the lights that okay, apparently this is a whole debate about whether you should go into the light or not. I didn't know it was a debate. Apparently it is. So for some they say if you go into the light that you are guaranteed to reincarnate back on earth. And some advise that you don't go into the lights so that you can have a choice. I thought that was really interesting. I do know that this
That
planet has.
oh, I was just gonna say that is really interesting, and we should actually add that to our channeling list.
No, we definitely should, or at least like make it another podcast episode. Because I'd be intrigued to know more about that too. Because I've heard that there's been on this particular planet like this reincarnation trap where souls like that die and want a choice are immediately forced to reincarnate without that choice being given or like any explanation or like meeting with their spiritual team. I don't know how true that is, conspiracies. So I would definitely want to know more about that though. That's a good topic.
Definitely.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole reincarnation thing because when I put that comment on TikTok, it just seems like people were aghast that an archangel would ever do something like this. Like, oh my God, like I cannot believe that. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of perspective on why sometimes reincarnating is necessary. Because it wasn't nefarious, it was just something that needed to happen and was necessary for that particular soul. So, interesting thing, me and Ali often do channelings and do get to talk to the different archangels. that thread on TikTok with that guy who's the witch, there was a lot of reference to archangels in that thread, which I thought was really interesting because I know there are some people who are devotees of specific archangels. Like, "Oh, that's my guy. Like, I pray to him and I talk to him and, blah, blah, blah." Um, and there were a couple comments on there about some of these archangels and like their devotees and like how if you're associated with this archangel, then, you know, no one can hex you or curse you. And so I think we need to do a channeling session about some of that too, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know all about that. I mean, like, yeah, I was a witch in prior lives, but as far as like the curses and the spells and like the different archangels and protection that might be associated with that or not, I want to know more because I just I feel like there's a lot there that we could explore, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that
And
there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. So
no,
we'll
there definitely
definitely
is. There
check that
definitely
out.
is. And we did a channeling session like the other day where we talked to a specific archangel who said that he was the archangel of wisdom. And I think, Ali, you had said, isn't there another archangel of wisdom? And, he replied that they all have wisdom and have their own specific set of wisdom. So technically speaking, they're all angels of wisdom, which I thought was really, really interesting. Um, so they kind of all have their own thing and specialization and their own wisdom for certain things, but at the same time, I think that there are specific angels that are known for doing specific things and being helpful in specific ways to humans. And so there was one particular archangel in that thread that they were referencing a lot. And um, I just thought that was really fascinating and want to explore that a little bit more.
There's so much to explore. It just never ends. And that's why I love knowledge. Like learning just never stops.
By the way, you guys, so we are, how can I say this? We're channelers and we consider ourselves to be very effective channelers. However, we by no means are the only channelers on this planet who can do this. There are other channelers out there, and there are some who have websites and audiences. And we have tested some of the things that some of these other websites are saying that they're getting through quote unquote channelings. And some of the stuff we're getting is conflicting with what we're seeing from these other channelers. Now,
That can
pause.
happen though. It can happen because I think every channeler can also interprets things. It's just like every tarot reader will interpret the cards maybe differently from us.
Okay, but while that's possible, when you and I do that, there's common ground somewhere. Like somewhere, there's common ground.
No, I agree. But I mean, do you think, you know, this might be up for debate, but do you think that's just because of like our connection? I don't know.
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know.
When we channeled yesterday, yes, we did get some conflicting opinions and information, and that can happen. And I don't want to be disrespectful of anyone else's abilities or gifts, and I'm not looking to start a debate. I think that's really important for our audience to know. It's just we receive different information, and that can happen. I think you can get information from anywhere. I think people can read information differently from tarot. I think people can, interpret the channeling different depending on how they channel. If they're not like, if they don't hear the words, then they're channeling from feeling or intuition, and that can come out differently. And I think that's really important for everyone to practice discretion when these people are going online and posting these things and saying these things, because you just don't know how accurate it really truly is. And you guys should even do that with us. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit our ability, but you know, I've mentioned this before in previous podcast episodes that it's really important to build your intuition. It's really important for you to find your own truth. And you really only do that by building your intuition and trusting yourself and doing your own research and finding out your own facts. That's really important when you become a truth seeker. And when you dive into conspiracies, it's like, the information's out there. It's like you're a detective and you're finding all these little puzzle pieces and you have to put them together and like make one big picture. And so it's really important that, you practice that for yourself. And so you can become confident in your abilities, but anyone can post anything online or social media, so it is really important that you practice discretion.
Speaking of that, that guy on TikTok, like TikTok is like its own universe because there's so much stuff on there that is questionable, but people just eat it up. And I don't know if that guy is actually a witch. I don't know if he actually casts spells and stuff. I mean, he says he does, and he's like, oh, I charge this for that. But who knows? And, I made my comments. It was mostly out of like intrigue, but you guys don't know, who I am or if anything I post might be real or not. Like, so that's what Ali means is like it is really important to practice discretion and use your intuition when you're finding some of this stuff on TikTok too, not just online. And that's something that I've had to do too with TikTok because TikTok it can be a lot of fun and it's very entertaining, but some of the stuff on there is just like you really have to like analyze because if you don't, you could just get lost in some of the stuff they say on there. Um, and so yeah, it's very very important that you guys do practice discretion and I've used tarot sometimes when I see something and I'm like, is this true? Is this real? And tarot will guide me in the direction I need to go in. So if you need to use divination on some of the content that you guys are stumbling upon, you can do that too. So, we just wanted to share that because I know it's easy to get like sucked into some of that stuff.
TikTok's a giant rabbit hole, and that's why I have a love-hate relationship with it because I will go to the bottom of that hole sometimes.
Oh, I will too. And like I'll see it on TikTok and then go off TikTok to dig the hole deeper. Um
Same.
right. So yeah, TikTok is just it's an interesting place. Like I mostly use it for entertainment. So like the funny videos and the memes and stuff is mostly what I like. Like the other stuff, like the conspiracies and stuff, still comes across my feed, but I try not to get lost in that stuff too much like I used to before. Because before I was like believing everything. I was like, oh no, I gotta look into this. I gotta look into this. I gotta look into this. I think my guys yelled at me. But but yeah, so I mean, like, you just gotta kind of pick your poison, I guess, when it comes to that stuff.
Agreed. And that's why we also wanted to talk about this because, I didn't realize that Tiara was still getting comments. What is it? Almost 9 months later, 7 months
8 months,
later,
like
8
eight,
months
9 months, yeah,
later. And I
yeah,
was just like, okay, we have to talk about this because it is something that, you know, we know the soul and we know the archangel and we kind of were witnesses to it. And so we are speaking on this from our own personal experience and the things that we have witnessed. And so we just wanted to address it because I know, if people are still asking about it, then I was like, it's time to share the story. So here we are.
correct. So I hope that you know that gives you a little bit of context in regards to where that came from, that particular comment. Um, but yeah, that's essentially what happens, and it was interesting to observe. And that angel like terrified me. like
You
terrified of him.
did. For a while, you were terrified of that archangel. You were just like, "No,
So
I'm good."
terrified. I was like, okay, don't like look at him the wrong way.
Let me just say this real quick about the archangels. I didn't know really like the archangel's capacity. Now you can call me naive for that, but Tiara sent me like an article telling me like the horrific things that they have done. Just like I think like one archangel like took away a man's voice. I'm not saying the man didn't deserve it or anything, and I was like, okay, that's scary. And she was like, see, they're scary.
I mean, you know, perspectives may vary, but like at that time, like they terrified the shit out of me, like terrified me. And I've seen TikToks where people, mostly witches, are like, this archangel scary, this archangel scary, stay away from this one, stay away from that one. And I'm just like, oh my God.
You're not the only person that's been terrified of archangels. I mean, if you read some of those comments from the original TikTok that we started the episode with, people are like, yeah, you don't want to mess with the archangels. Like, you don't like, what did you do to make this archangel angry? Like, I swifted through like some of those comments and I was just like, wow, okay. Like, it's a known thing. Like, people are terrified of them.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like I know that that sentiment is out there and it's quite rife, you know, obviously depending on who you are and the things you're doing. Um yeah, you're going to feel some kind of way. And I think some of it depends on like rumors and I think some people have had experiences. So like that one soul that had an experience and probably is scarred for life or I don't know, what eternity. So you know.
Yeah, it's not the best idea to make enemies with the universe. That's just my advice.
Or the archangels too.
Well, they are part of the universe. I'm just saying, like, let's like don't make enemies with your spirit guides or angelic beings or the universe or gods. You especially don't want to piss off gods.
Right. And
Because there's a
yet,
hierarchy up there, you guys. It is a hierarchy, and like the further up you go, you don't like the higher up you go, like the less you want to mess with them.
so basically what she's saying is the higher up they go, the scarier they get. So, you know, you've been warned. Like, you don't piss them off. Don't like look at them the wrong way or like talk about their mama. Like, just do what they say.
Yeah, Tiara has said too in like past episodes, she's like, I don't want to argue with the universe. I don't want to piss off the universe. Who does that?
You do not know how terrified I am of the universe. Like, sheer terror. And I know that's probably not healthy, but I'm working on it. So, you know, I'm just putting that out there.
We'll
Some of
have
us
to
feel
have
some kind of way.
we'll have to have an episode about that. Actually, maybe that will be our next episode.
The sheer terror of the universe. The universe is a scary place, guys. We're going to explain why.
Perspectives. I'm not terrified of the universe, but Tiara is. So that's what I'm saying. Perspectives.
Right. Okay. I like that idea.
Well, I'm so happy that we were finally able to address this TikTok, and I hope this brings clarity to those who have been, on this for months and curious. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.